Welcome to Aural Hygiene. It's the podcast where we talk about educational films, experimental cult films, and interesting documentaries. This is Matt here. Today with me is the author of the recent book, Not Fucking Around, Jeff Leisawitz. Hello. Thank you for coming in.
Hello, thanks for having me in, beaming across the world.
Radio. And yeah, I guess we're claiming caught film today. We're looking at Almost Famous, which is probably the most mainstream one we've done here, because I threw out your way about like a songwriter documentary, and everything I came across was Nashville, which is that's well and good, but I don't know, it wasn't setting a fire on me. And you said Almost Famous. I was like, yes.
Yeah, I love that one. It's awesome, awesome movie.
Can you give everyone sort of just the TV Guide synopsis of this one?
Sure. It's about a kid in the 70s who manages to get on tour with a rock band to write an article about them in Rolling Stone magazine.
Yeah, that basically covers it. And of course, it's directed by Cameron Crowe, who was basically that rock journalist in the 70s. I know when the movie came out, some people were like, oh, it seems a little bit unrealistic. But it's like, well, the director did this. So, you can't really call it, stranger than fiction sort of thing. When did you first see this one? Did you catch it in the theater? Or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I saw this when it first came out. I bought the DVD immediately. I've seen this one a million times. I freaking love this movie. Not just because it's a great movie and I love music, but besides being a life coach for creatives and songwriters, I was a music journalist. I was not quite that kid in that movie. But I started writing record reviews in junior high, in college, did it professionally for many years, including in the mid 90s when I moved to Seattle for the radio station that broke grunge music to the world. So I wrote the website for that radio station, which, by the way, in the mid 90s, no one even heard of a website. So it was like kind of breaking new ground in a lot of directions. So it was pretty cool.
Well, I think it might have been someone in Congress or something in the mid 90s. I just remember there's a quote with someone saying, oh, the internet may eventually have like 10 or 20 websites on it. as a mid 90s quote. Yeah, I saw this one. I think I saw it on opening night. I not made the mistake because I do prefer it, but I find myself in a time pinch last night because I actually have the extended cut. So that's the one I just got through. It's one of those things where I've actually forgotten what they added. So I guess it's good I watched that one.
Yeah, cool. Was that a DVD or was that a digital?
No, yeah, it's my Japanese DVD. It's got the title in Japanese underneath.
Got it. Cool.
So fortunately, a lot of the discs can play on American players and back and forth. And so I know you mentioned Seattle and grunge time. So did you have a grunge favorite?
A grunge favorite artist or band?
Yeah.
Or experience with the bands?
Oh, you could take it both ways if you like. How about musically?
Oh, musically, I liked a lot of it, but I never loved I was not a super hardcore fan of that style of music. However, I did like a lot of it. I mean, certainly Nirvana, Smashing Pumpkins, the Everclear. This is grunge / alternative, I guess. So yeah, all kinds of stuff like that.
I just in the early 90s or mid 90s, I was playing in bands, and I remember we were able to play at some girl's house in her basement, and the mom was like, you can play, but you have to play Nirvana songs for me. So that was like the deal. We had to play Nirvana songs for my personal favorite was probably Mudhoney, but yeah.
Mudhoney, yeah. Mm-hmm.
The scummiest sounds of all. Now in this one, of course, we get the band Stillwater, which I guess would kind of go in your cabinet with like the Guess Who or James Gang or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, I'm not sure uh if Cameron Crowe wrote that based on his experience with or what the band was, because I think it was based on an experience with the band, at least partially. That plane, the near plane wreck was certainly a big thing in the 70s. So I'm not sure specifically what band he drew that from. Do you?
I think there's a fair amount of Zeppelin in here. Stillwater in here, clearly being a crappier band than Zeppelin, really. But I mean, you don't want to have like one of the best bands as your subject in this one because they're almost
Right.
famous. But the this was the first time I think that Led Zeppelin had actually licensed their music to be in a movie. If you
Yeah, that
watched,
was kind of amazing. Yeah.
because like if you watch Wayne's World, when Wayne plays the Stairway riff, it's clearly not Stairway.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, interesting. I mean, I guess Cameron Crowe knew them personally from his work as a journalist from back in the day. And I suspect he, just reached out to him and said, here's what I got. Do you want to go for it?
yeah, it's basically calling in a favor. Um,
Yeah, not too many people who can, call up Robert Plant and ask him, can I use your music in my movie? So, yeah.
and I think I do recall hearing that Jimmy Page was the one impossible to get down for a personal interview as the mysterious guitarist.
Okay, cool.
um, I guess that's not, I actually I do cross a lot of these tracks. I started university doing journalism school. I actually kept a music blog for 10 years writing reviews on psychedelic albums, though I didn't. It's only been podcasting that I've started talking to more, creatives and artists and things directly. So
Hmm.
as one of the co-hosts here said, "Oh, you're a journalist now." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
It's cool. You never know where life is going to take you.
Right, right. Something else that struck me, it's probably been about 5 years since I watched this, and this time I was like, wow, this isn't like just a glam cast. I mean, everybody in this film just looks like amazing.
Yeah, a lot of people in there for sure.
And I know at the time, I was actually into Jason Lee probably because of the Kevin Smith film, so I was happy to see him in here. The bass player, I believe, is Mark Kozilek, who's Red House Painters and Sun Kill Moon, which last year he ran across a bunch of accusations of being horrible towards the ladies. So I was really sorry to hear that because I did like his music, but watching the film last night, I was like, okay, I can see where this guy might come across as a little creepy.
Yeah, I don't know.
But yeah, it's one of those things. Like, can I still enjoy that music if this person is reprehensible? I'm not sure, but definitely responsible for some very good music. The drummer, I forget where he is from, to be honest. But um, what is your basic like musical jam? Is what you said you did the grunge? It wasn't necessarily your thing. What is your top flight music?
To listen to or to create?
Again, I'll take both answers.
Well, I mean, I certainly like a lot of different styles to listen to, and I'm a fan of everything from 70s rock, all those tons and tons of great rock bands back then, to the 80s kind of synth pop, stuff like that. I'm into, funkiness, a little punk rock, where I sort of built my ethos of how to be in the world with a little bit of rebellion, questioning authority, and stuff like that. Also singer songwriter, music, just very simple, acoustic guitar and voice kind of stuff. Electronic music, I was big into trip hop, not so much electronic dance music, although I'm into the production of that kind of stuff more than the actual songs and things like that. So really, lots of different stuff.
I think your book mentioned an interesting album of U2 covers. Was it?
Right, yes. So as an artist and a producer, I made an album which was electronic versions of U2 songs, U2 being one of my all-time favorites, with a bunch of female singers on there. So that was really cool, really fun. It's got tons of play. It's at over 1 million plays online. So that's cool. And it was great working with all those singers. However, I would not recommend to anyone trying to find 14 different amazing singers for one project. It took me, I probably did 100 auditions to get that many singers.
Yeah, that sounds like a headache. Yeah, I've gotten pretty punk rock. I like to make music, but I pretty much do it on my own. I get like, co-writers. I have something collaborating, but again, living in the mountains of Japan, there was a brief time where I had coworkers that were musicians and we were jamming for a few months, but currently that's not the case. So I'm just in a room filled with guitars, but
Oh, it's not bad. Not a bad place to be.
yeah. And I'd been working on kind of like funky electronic stuff and recently just came across a bunch of actually someone I interviewed for his podcast and got handed a bunch of lyrics from the 70s. So now I'm trying to make my copy of a, early 70s like folk rock album.
Oh, cool. That sounds fun.
But and yeah, actually it's the first time I really picked up my acoustic guitar seriously for years. So it's kind of nice to touch base with that again.
Absolutely.
I was definitely lusting after some of the guitars in this movie. They made sure to put very nice ones in the backgrounds.
Yeah, musicians are big into their instruments, and beautiful instruments are quite a thing.
It is interesting because I played 20 years barely thinking about my gear and not even knowing, what the knobs really did on the guitars. And in the past 5 years, I have become a little more of a gearhead. Just, it hasn't changed my music at all or how I do that. It's just like something to think about. And I annoy some friends by delving into 20 minutes of gear talk when they have no clue what I'm talking about. So,
well, cool gear is cool if you know how to use it, right? Just playing around with it, doing whatever.
So you do some life coaching, you give advice. Are the guys in Stillwater doing it the right way or the wrong way?
That's a good question. So yeah, I am a life coach for creatives, and songwriters in particular, but all kinds of other types. I have been and am a successful musician and producer, as well as a filmmaker, writer, that books, screenplays, all kinds of stuff. So I've been in the creative field for quite a while. And, what I've come to realize is there's obviously a lot of challenges like any career. However, it's going to amplify in the creative fields. Part of it is the external world. How do you just write a song every day? How do you prioritize your art? How do you learn all this gear, all those kinds of things. And then there's the internal world. And the internal world is, sort of like the psychology beneath all of us, whether you're a creative or not. Our subconscious ideas about ourselves and about the world really drive how we perceive the world and how we act upon it. So if we have subconscious beliefs about the world that says the world's out to get me and everything's too hard, not good, right? Also, if you have subconscious beliefs that say, I'm not good enough, or I'm not smart enough or talented enough, right? These kinds of beliefs are going to influence everything we do and say and how we interact with the world. So you could see that in this movie. You could see, the singer, I think, especially, who was, very ego driven, very pompous, very self-righteous about what the music is and this and that, right? But he wanted to be a rich rock star. And he was insecure about his voice. He was giving Russell all these, the guitar player, you always thought you were better than us, and he was better than them, right? But that made him feel bad about his own skills and about where this band was, and insecure about the entire band situation, because essentially what was happening in that band was Russell could walk at any time and they all knew it, right? So if Russell walks, the band is over unless they find another guitar player that's that good, which is not particularly likely. So what I would say, if I was coaching this band, it would be like, let's get honest and let's get real, not scream at each other over the t-shirts. That was not helpful, right? Let's actually talk to each other and, what are our fears? What are our hopes? for this band, and what's stopping us from moving forward. And from there, hopefully you could get a dialogue with those guys going, and they could have sort of a healthier situation. It's almost like that movie with Metallica where they had the therapist come in there. You ever see that one?
I know that's some kind of monster, but weirdly I just named without having seen it.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's sort of what that movie was about. Metallica is and was a band that generates so much money for so many people, between the labels and the managers and all the touring and all that kind of stuff. They were sort of on the verge of breaking up or something, and they hired this therapist to come in, this counselor, somebody to facilitate the discussion between the bands so that they would have a healthier relationship and be able to continue essentially making music and then making money for everybody around them, including themselves. So, whether it's in a band or, a family or a relationship or work or whatever, honest communication is, generally works. You need to be able to communicate properly and effectively, but when people get that, it generally tends to move the needle forward.
Yeah, it's making me think of the TV show Metalocalypse, where they have it's like Metallica just like pumped up, where they're now the 8th largest economy in the world, and the band members are all just like bored out of their minds and relatively dull-witted. So I guess some kind of monster maybe hits that vibe a little bit.
Could be, I don't know.
Of course, we need to get to. Oh God! See, all I can think of is Cameron Crowe. William Miller. There we go. Okay, who is our actual lead, with Stillwater basically being the supporting cast. And in the contrast here, it does seem that William is doing it more, quote unquote, right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. As the protagonist in the film, he's doing the best he can. Certainly, he's essentially fighting with his mom, fighting with not exactly fighting with Russell, but struggling with Russell. Has tension with Penny Lane, right? He's in love with her, and he can't. She's in love with she's in love with Russell. He's not paying that much attention to her, not treating her very well. So yeah, the interesting thing is he's the youngest of the whole crew, and yet he's the most mature, really, of everyone.
But he has a support system. He's having trouble with his mom, but his mom remains the support system. The sister's off, but when they do run into each other, instantly become supporting. Lester Bangs, being played by Philip Seymour Hoffman, which is quite fantastic. On my Sci-Fi podcast, we just watched the final cut with Robin Williams, and yeah, just seeing these guys a few years after they departed the planet, it's kind of weirdly depressing, because I don't think I'd watched a movie with him in it, Seymour Hoffman in it, for a few years. So
yeah,
but yeah, the whole idea of faking it until you make it, I guess, is important, because there's always a reason to just call it quits, right? Even in terms of this podcasting, sometimes I'm like, why am I doing this? And I don't know, because I want to.
So as a life coach, I would, ask you to invite you to dig into that a little bit more, right? Wanting to do something it's a very surface reason. It really isn't the actual answer. So, the question would be like what really drives you or Russell or, William or anybody to do the things we do? Because unless you are conscious of the drivers in your behavior, you're never going to be fully aligned with your energy, and thus be able to take it, whatever it is, as far as you would like it to go.
One thing I found, one thing I've kind of mentioned on the podcast before is just confronting social anxiety. I'm always now talking to people cold like we are today, and
Sure.
In real life, I'm the guy that's actually probably going to sit back and play a guitar at the party, so I don't have to talk to anybody, right? I'll go to the party, but I'm going to play guitar and not talk to people. So I have found at first, I started podcasting with with one of my coworkers and just getting a more free form of conversation. I was like, how am I even going to keep a conversation going for an hour? Then we start having guests, people, and then guests I didn't know. And, now I'm doing this podcast where I just go straight and talk to people that I haven't met before. So,
Sure.
when I started, and I didn't realize it till I'd been doing it for a while. It's like, oh, this is actually me, working on, sort of getting past social anxiety and communicating better and things like that. So,
Absolutely. So good for you for doing that and for understanding it. Um, in any form of creativity and really any form of work or any endeavor at all, I believe that on some level we are trying to heal whatever parts of ourselves may be hurting or insecure or fearful or whatever. So, for you, by starting a podcast, that's a major step forward, right? You're talking to all these people, this and that. I would invite you again as a life coach to, instead of think of this as I'm doing this because I want to, it is doing it because this is helping me connect with the world, right? Connect with people of similar interests, things like that, et cetera, and perhaps even alter the mission of the podcast a bit so that is more aligned with what you're actually doing.
right. Yeah. Because, it's always been an excuse. Oh, I live in Japan in the mountains, even not even the city. There's not that many people around, but, if nothing else, 2020 did for me is I got everyone on Zoom. So it's kind of a nice,
Exactly.
just call up anyone anywhere, which I've definitely been digging. As for music, it's basically like if I go 2 months without making a song, I just start to get depressed. So that one I'm not even quite in. And well, in that case, yeah. I just love playing music. So, I mean, you get that, you're a musician, but
Yes, but I would ask the same question. It's not it's not why do you really play music?
I sort of think of it as like painting. Of course, that leads to the question, why are you painting anyway? But when I make music, I'm trying to, make things that create images and emotions, not necessarily even for other people. I enjoy listening to stuff I make on my own. And when other people do comment, it's just, hey, that's nice. Someone else got into it.
Okay, so that's good. And I would again ask the same question, why? Why do you want to paint pictures about emotion?
Yeah, probably because I don't want to talk about them that much. I'd rather give you a feeling as opposed to explaining. So, one thing I do with the music, I can write lyrics perfectly fine, but for the past several years, I've always been outsourcing my lyrics because it's like I want to commit what I'm trying to put through completely abstractly. What is this feeling I'm feeling? Here's sort of the a nice attempt at conveying that through sound.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, that sounds good. Sounds like you've got your process going. And, once again, with many of them, really all of my clients, whether they're writing books or, even starting businesses or making music or acting or any of these things, at some level, it really is about the expression and the healing within us. Cameron Crowe made that movie so he could understand what happened to him. Right? It happens to be an amazing story. It happens to be, we love it, and it's quite popular and all this and that. But I think at the very bottom of it, it's he had this experience when he was a kid, and now he's, I don't know, 40, 50 years old, whatever he is, and he's trying to understand what happened. Like, how did he become who he was? Right? Those years as a kid working for Rolling Stone shaped his entire life.
Yeah, exactly. And at that point, your high school years just go by at such a blur. It's pretty wild sometimes. So
Absolutely.
yeah, for me, one feeling I always had was just to get out of my hometown. Whenever I'd return, I'm from Atlanta. Nothing wrong with Atlanta. I like Atlanta fine, but it's just I've always felt the urge to get away from Atlanta. And well, I got about as far away as I can. So
Absolutely.
And that was, starting with baby steps. I started working in South Carolina, then Maine, then Canada, and then Japan. So
Okay.
it's a bit of
One
a
big plane ride, yeah.
your book is this year. You just released that, did you?
No, it was released a little while ago,
Oh,
but
okay.
I'm doing, like I've said, I do the coaching. I've got clients really all over the world, all kinds of creatives. And I would like to just make an offer to your listeners, which is if you can make your way to my website, jeffleisawitz.com. Hopefully you can put that in your show notes or something.
No problem.
I'm very happy to do a introductory sort of Zoom call with people to help them to see how I can help you essentially with whatever you're doing, whether it's business stuff around your creativity or more of the internal stuff that we talked about before, all this and that. And if you just want to read the book, cool. That's on Amazon pretty much all over the world.
I just got that read on the train. I do most of my reading on trains these days, and actually I do a lot of music creation on trains. You can at least start sketching things out on an iPad, anywhere. So it's kind of fun. Been recording in rice fields, things like that. Getting birds into songs simply because they're there. So that's kind of fun.
Very cool, man.
But yeah, definitely a good read, and of course, Almost Famous is. I think there's been times in my life I would have put it in my top 10. I'm not quite, it might be in the 20 now, but definitely up there. A good one to get into.
Very good.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I know you have some places to run, so I will let you off the horn for now, but thanks for joining us in here today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Hope your listeners got some goodness out of that. And thank you so much for having me on.
Okay. Keep it real.